Vale, entonces, como resumen, mucha gente estaría usando a Patrick Guijarro de MCD, ¿no? Porque tiene el rol plus de holding, ¿vale? Y de todo el mundo le pone sombra. Bien, con sombra se queda en la defensa de 92, ¿vale? Entonces tú te vienes aquí y dices, tiene 92 de defensa, y hemos dicho que al solamente tener el rol plus, se quedaría un 95% de ese 92. Por lo tanto, se quedaría con 87 de defensa, ¿vale? De IA. Vamos a entender como IA defensiva se quedaría en 87, Patrick Guijarro. Pero, si en vez de ponerle sombra, que es lo que hace todo el mundo, le pones guardián, por un ejemplo, y se queda en 96 y la utilizas de Playmaker, ¿vale? Que es de Playmaker, pues como está todo terreno, ¿no? Se llama algo así. Hemos dicho que es 96, ¿vale? 96 y dice que puede ser un 120 o 110, o a ver, 115. De 96 estaría con 110 de IA. Por tanto, esta Patrick Guijarro DMC con lo de todoterreno, creo que es todoterreno, iría volanding. Yo creo que bastante interesante, ¿eh? La verdad, yo tengo que estudiar todo esto, prefiero preparar la oposición. Ya, pero yo lo estoy explicando lo que ha dicho el desarrollador, ¿no? Claro, es que tú te paras a pensarlo y dices, bueno, pero tiene 92 ya, pero el dar el 95, 90, no sé. Ya sabéis, chavales, para cualquier tipo de... A lo mejor escribo un libro, ¿no? Matemáticas con el tío Lambert para las mejores formaciones. Mbappé de promo, Pelé, la mejor carta del juego, Ronaldo Nazario. Si quieres tener un equipo absolutamente increíble, ahora es más fácil con Unca con nuestros colegas Usain Buy. Usain Buy nos trae la nueva promo Mega Bonus, donde los nuevos usuarios anteriores, nos dan unos regalos, una cantidad de monedas. Ahí lo tenéis, chavales, hasta 100.000, 200.000 monedas de regalo. Es simplísimo, a través del enlace que tenéis en la descripción y con el código Lambert nos hacen un 6% de descuento. Así que ya sabéis, chavales, el mejor equipo del juego, código Lambert. Venga, chavales, vamos a reaccionar aquí, estamos en directazo a un vídeo de NepentheZ, supongo que sabéis quién es un streamer barra youtuber muy conocido en la comunidad inglesa, en el cual habla sobre los roles y por qué son tan importantes en FC25. Hay que decir que mucha gente, entre las cuales yo me incluyo, cree que esto es el eje de por qué va mal el juego, ¿vale? No que te guste más, que te guste menos, sino por qué el juego funciona mal. A mí personalmente me gustan los roles, creo que la idea es top, pero creo que el motor gráfico... No sé qué es lo que va a decir, no lo he visto. Me lo han recomendado aquí en el directazo, lo vamos a ver. Yo creo, mi impresión a priori es que el motor gráfico no soporta la cantidad de animaciones y los roles, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que los jugadores, cuando tienen que hacer esos movimientos de los roles plus, los roles plus, lo que tú quieras... tardan mucho tiempo en reaccionar, el juego va lento, el juego va con input lag y yo creo que siempre ha ido mal, pero ya con esto, este año es injugable el juego, yo creo que por esto. Vamos a ver qué es lo que dice. Está con subtítulos en inglés porque no está en español,
What's up,
¿vale?
guys? NepentheZ here, and welcome back to another FC25 video, where today we are going to discuss a new addition that came to the game this year and give a little bit more detail and understanding about it, and that is roles. That is right. EA introduced FCIQ this year, and along...
A ver, vamos a ponerlo un poquito más rápido, si os parece, porque es que si no, tardamos aquí año y medio. Esto está aquí, la velocidad, lo ponemos a 1,5. ¿Vale?
With it came roles, and generally speaking, they didn't give any information on the roles, really. You know, there's some like little tidbits and there's some like very vague information in the team management section about
dice
what
que no lo han
roles do,
explicado bien,
and they don't
realmente,
really
¿no?
give
Dice que no han explicado del todo, como que ahí lo pone, pero que tampoco es que hayan dado una gran explicación de qué es lo que hace o cómo, no, o cómo funciona, ¿no?
understanding as to whether or not they have a lot of value. So, you know, here we've got Pi Havertz as advanced 4++, and all it says is a versatile attacker who usually stays close to the opposition's defensive line, but opens them up for passes in a build-up, makes runs...
Espérate, a lo mejor me columpio y lo he puesto esto demasiado rápido. Vamos a ponerlo a 1,25, ¿vale?
in behind the back line. And, you know, they told us that Role Plus is good, Role Plus Plus is world class. You know, you could have like a role but no plus or plus plus, and then you can have no role. But they really didn't give much else beyond that. As the game cycle started to develop this year, you know, we're into December, nearly into January right now, they still haven't really come up with anything for us until recently. But one thing that they did this year that made me think that they are super valuable was gatekeep them in evolutions and promos. And it is very, very rare, even now, that you will find a single player that has 2 role pluses. Some of them have got them because of like the upgrades, some Thunderstruck.
Sí, dice que son muy valiosos y que hay pocas cartas que tienen el doble rol plus plus. Bueno, ya tengo alguno como de Sailly y demás. Y antes estaba diciendo que estamos en mitad de diciembre y que realmente todavía no han explicado bien el funcionamiento de los roles, ¿no? De si el plus plus hay una gran diferencia con el plus o que no lo tenga o no. Yo al principio sí que lo notaba bastante, como que las cartas se movían mejor, un poco rollo como con o sin química, ¿no? Pero he de decir que ahora no lo noto tanto en algunas cartas o no sé.
Players have got 2. I think Ashley Cole, for example, has got wingback ++ and fullback ++. And some of them have just been given 2 in certain promos. So right here, Little got given playmaker ++ at centre mid and cam, and then has a role plus in every other area. And so I started to get a feeling that roles were so much more valuable than EA were letting on. And I started applying more roles to my players and getting them in position. And then EA did a podcast, or the Foot Weekly podcast, a couple of weeks ago. You can find it on Spotify or I believe on YouTube as well. And one of the gameplay developers, Tom Cleffy, was on that podcast talking about lots of different things, but one of the big things that
Bueno, estaba diciendo que él tiene el sentimiento, el presentimiento de que los roles son más importantes de lo que la gente cree y que estuvo escuchando un podcast hace poco donde había un desarrollador de EA. Entre los cuales estaba hablando de esto. Supongo que va a decir.
And he gave some information that blew my mind, and we're going to talk about it today a little bit in a bit more depth, give you guys a bit more of a context and understanding of not only what roles do, and we still don't know what they do, but more about how important they are, but also about how different chem styles can really help influence the way your players play. Probably for the first time ever, they're more dynamic than ever before. And if you'll notice on my team right here, I used this team, well, actually I had Erdegaard in here. I don't have him right now, but I had
que el desarrollador básicamente decía que son mucho más importantes de lo que la gente cree.
God, where Little is, and I had Smith Thunderstruck where Jesus is, and I had just pretty any random striker actually at striker. I think I had Robin van Persie here, so I had Van Persie, Smith, and Erdegaard in that front 3. Otherwise, this was a team that I got 11 wins with last week. And what you notice about it is that other than Saliba, because I just can't bring myself to change an anchor off of him, nobody, actually that's not true, McCabe has as well an anchor, nobody has pace play styles. I've got Sentinels across my back line, I've got a Guardian on Jorginho, I've got Basic on Little, I've got Finisher on both Jesus and Havertz, and I had Finisher on my other 2 strikers as well.
Creo que lo que está diciendo es que las químicas son más importantes de lo que la gente cree, asimiladas a los roles, ¿no? Que cuando una carta tiene un rol, hay que ponerle como una química especial, ¿no? Bueno, especial no, que sea exactamente esa, creo que lo que está diciendo. Bueno.
And I've got Deadeye on Bukayo Saka. And I want to tell you why first, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what it actually means. So it transpires, and we're going to go through the facts and the details in a moment, a bit deeper. But it transpires that for defenders, defensive awareness is a really key stat, and for attackers, attack positioning is a really key stat with the way that they work.
Sí, básicamente te dice que el posicionamiento de ataque para los delanteros es tremendamente importante y que en defensa, aquí donde pone Defend Aware, que no me acuerdo cómo se llama en español, de cuando tiene 83, aquí que no se ve, bueno, el tercero por aquí abajo, es lo más importante de los defensas.
Within roles. And so I looked at what chem styles give the most defensive awareness boost and the most attack positioning boost. And would you believe, and this is again something that's like almost like it shows how valuable this information is. There's only 2 playstyles that give 8 defensive awareness. It is Sentinel and it is Guardian. There's also only 2 playstyles that give 8 attack positioning. It is Finisher and it is Deadeye. The reason why I really like Basic as well, and why I've got Basic on...
Sí, que Centinela y Guardián, y arriba lo de Deadeye y el otro, que creo que es Finisher, ¿no? Que al final todo el mundo le intenta poner Cazador para el ritmo y atrás le pone todo el mundo Sombra, pero lo que más le da parece ser que son Guardian y el otro que es lo que le sube el...
On Kim Little is because it gives 4 defensive and 4 attack positioning. And it's the only chem style that boosts both of them. And I also think that other than a couple of maybe nuanced stats like volleys and penalties potentially, it kind of boosts like all of the key stats. And so I really think Basic is really, really good. And I've really enjoyed Little Kim so far. 23 games on her. I think she's absolutely brilliant. So what I did was basically put chem styles on players to try and get them up as close to 99 defensive awareness and 99 attack positioning as possible based on the information that we're going to talk about here today. As I said, I could easily put a Sentinel on William Saliba.
Básicamente que a todos los jugadores ofensivos y defensivos le está poniendo diferentes diferentes químicas, ¿no? Ponerlo de guardián y demás para intentar, me voy a quitar de aquí un segundo, ¿veis? Donde pone ahí Defense Awareness, donde tiene ahora mismo 88, todo llevarlo en lo máximo posible a que tenga 99 o los delanteros el posicionamiento de ataque.
As well, get him up that extra bit, and I I've got Calafiori up to 93 defensive awareness. I've got Ashley Cole up to 97 defensive awareness. Jorginho with that Guardian chem style boosts his dribbling massively, and his defensive awareness and interceptions really nicely as well, and his passing is already so good. And then Bukayo Saka, I mean, I score so many finesse shots with him, 134 goals in 141 games, and it's probably about 120 finesse shots. Like, and a lot of it comes from great positioning, being in the right place at the right time.
Bueno, la verdad que es importante.
And then in general, the really good shot power and long shots. And then we looked at Little already, but McCabe's an interesting one because I gave her an anchor because her defensive awareness is already so high that it wasn't, you know, I could only gain an extra 3, which might be worth it in any sense. But I have no troubles playing with this team, guys. I'm in Division 2 now in Rivals. I did get promoted to Division 2. I just went 5-1 in qualifiers. I went 11 wins last weekend in champs, and I have like tailored my team towards roles and chem styles that improve roles. And guys, as I put my broken headset on for the first time in a long time, if you like this content, if you're enjoying what you're watching here today, I can absolutely do a deep dive on roles and how they interchange perfectly. But I've got a lot of information to cover off today, so let's get into it. The first thing that we're going to look at, guys, and this is the podcast here. We've got Ben, the host, with Josh XL's editor, Josh, who's actually editing this very video as well, a host on the podcast too, and Tom Kalefi, who, as you can see there, is the eafc gameplay producer. And the first thing we're talking about is how tactics didn't really mean much before, but I don't think people understand how powerful they are, because he talks here about how only 30% of people used default tactics last year, including in the top divisions. Let's have a listen.
I'll be honest, a lot of people didn't even use tactics. Top divisions, we had stats that over 30% of people use default tactics in top divisions.
¿Habéis oído eso? Que dice que tiene los datos de que el 30% de las personas en las divisiones altas van con las tácticas predeterminadas, que no cambian nada.
Crazy if you ask me in previous games. So it's like, imagine you're one of the best players in the world in our game, and you don't even touch the system.
And it was interesting to hear him talk. Like, they have the data, but it was interesting to hear him talk about that, because there is something to be said for no tactics being a tactic. You know, the default tactics are still a tactic, but it is very true. And what it comes down to a lot of, and you're going to hear me talk about this side of things quite a lot today, is that people follow the pro meta when they are not pro.
Que dice que hay gente que busca tácticas de pros cuando ellos no son pros. Yo siempre lo digo, los pros van con 73 de profundidad o 80 de profundidad porque defienden de locos, porque tienen una defensa descomunal, porque hacen el cambio, el switch de jugador a una velocidad que flipas, y luego hay gente en séptima división que pretende poner eso, te van a meter 50, ¿sabes?
Players, and it makes them think that it's the best way to play the game because it's what the pros know. But the pros only know the best way they know how to play the game. They don't necessarily know how the best way to play the game is. And what I mean by that is, last year and the year before, Power Shot Plus came last year, but even the year before and the year before, I've been hitting Power Shot, like green timed volleys, like for a couple of years. And I could absolutely swear blind they was the most efficient way to score from about 40 yards out, so long as you had that little bit of room to pop the ball up. Yet you never saw anybody do it. Then this year, somebody scored a sick goal with Valverde, I think it was, that set it away, that I saw on Twitter, and everybody started spamming power shots. And it's a case of they didn't know they were so good because nobody wants to try and test them in a competitive environment. So they do the most efficient thing they know.
Sí, básicamente dice que aunque haya cosas que los pros no hacen, no significa que no funcionen bien, sino que los pros no saben lo chetadas que están. Que, por ejemplo, hubo uno que de repente empezó a zumbarle con Valverde, lo empezó a hacer todos los pros, y la gente que ve los pros, todo el mundo está reventando power shots con Valverde.
Or the most effective tactic available, the meta. And it's fascinating to me that there's so many people in the top divisions last year that didn't touch tactics, where it might have even helped make them way better. The thing that I think EA do a terrible job of, though, is explaining actually how they work and with each other.
You guys mentioned on the pod a few weeks back, a lot of the roles, they tend to be seen in isolation. And I know the heat map the activity map, it's not really a heat map, and some of the other things that we show on the screen, they are kind of in isolation, but the player roles complement each other a lot. So a lot of the times you notice if you have a specific role and another role, they're kind of going to interact with each other differently. And if you have another one, so I think those combinations, which are really true.
Básicamente está diciendo que la gente cree que los roles pueden funcionar de manera automática, ¿no? Un jugador y demás, pero dice que realmente es importante que la gente entienda que los roles funcionan en conjunto, ¿no? Que un jugador se junta con otro. Entonces, a lo mejor, si tiene mal puesto el rol de tu extremo y el rol de tu lateral, pues yo creo que lo está explicando, ¿no? No va a funcionar, ¿no? O el juego va a hacer movimientos extraños.
Tricky, bear in mind, but those combinations, I think it's one of the things that people kind of haven't picked up in everything else.
Something that's really interesting for me, what he talks about there, is the fact that roles are not they are what was the word that they work interchangeably, but the wording that he used was roles are not in isolation to each other. And
sí. Que no funcionan solos. Que un rol no funciona de manera diferente. O sea, que no está aislado, ¿no? Que los roles interactúan unos con otros y un jugador, tú le pones un rol que no esté correctamente y puede no funcionar bien en conjunto con el compañero, ¿no? Básicamente está comentando eso, tíos, que los roles no funcionan aislados unos de otros y que la gente tiene que entender que a lo mejor, pues eso, un MC... que tengas a los dos subir, pues yo qué sé, ¿sabes? Pero es que es verdad que no lo ha explicado bien del todo, ¿no? Como que no funcionan aislados, funcionan con su
it's something that's really fascinating because, you know, he talked there about how many combinations there are. We learned a lot last year as the year went on how valuable certain playstyles had in combination to each other. For example, having Flare and Finesse Shot Plus, or even Finesse Shot, gave a different animation to a Finesse Shot than a player that did not have Flare and Finesse Shot or Finesse Shot Plus. And, you know, there's other certain combinations, like, you know...
Sí, que si tiene el tiro, el finesse y tienes el flare pues hace una animación diferente el jugador, ¿no? Y que le ayuda a marcar más goles.
Of
por lo mismo con los roles.
In tandem together within within playstyles. But it's a lot easier to pick up on because you have a visual understanding. When you hit a finesse shot, you can see it. When you hit a power shot, you can see it. Claro. When you do a trickster fake shot, you can see the different animations that you get. When when a player has relentless, you can see the fact they've just got more stamina. When somebody has inside forward plus and they're playing with an advanced forward plus, you can't see it.
Dice que la diferencia con los playstyles es que tú lo ves. Tú ves que hace una animación, tú ves que tira más fuerte, pero los roles no lo ves. Si ya los ha metido este año, podría haber explicado 100%. Sí, lo que está diciendo antes.
We don't actually know. If I have Bukayo Saka on inside 4++, and then I have, let's say, Jesus, because he's on his side, on advanced 4++, what would be the difference if it was Poacher ++ instead? Where would they stand? How would they interact together? How would it interact with the midfielders and the attackers?
Mira, por ejemplo, te está diciendo, si tienes a los dos con lo de Advanced Forward, que es lo de delantero móvil o algo así, ¿qué diferencia hay si yo pongo a los dos con Advanced Forward ++ o si pongo a uno con Advanced Forward y al otro con el de Poacher, que es el de cazagoles, ¿no? Porque no lo he explicado. ¿Hay alguna diferencia si pongo uno de cada, si los pongo los dos juntos, si de repente están en fuera de juego todo el rato por eso, ¿sabes?
This is where I think a lot of people get caught out on this game. If you run 2 poachers and 2 inside forwards on attack, do you think all 4 of those players will be able to make the optimal runs into space? The tactic has to have some element of football sense, and it's true. You see a lot of people run inside forwards on both wingers, and I've got one on Saka as well, and it's crazy because inside forwards, if you have an inside forward on your left wing as well, or your left midfielder, you've effectively got 4 people occupying the same areas, and the space is going to, again, it's going to be important, right? And the roles to do with it are going to be important. Bukayo Saka, for me, has started scoring an insane amount of more goals, and this is where roles are like working within each other. I put Ben White to attacking wing back because I had Mike on there on loan for a few games. I've kept Ben White on attacking wing back because of what it did to Saka when I had Mike on there. When I had Mike on and he was pushing up the field more, Saka pushed inside and a bit deeper, a lot quicker, and I actually found Saka to be right on the edge of the box, which is exactly where I want him for those finesse shots all of the time. And
Básicamente aquí te está explicando que desde que le puso al lateral o al carrilero subir, lo que hace es que Saka automáticamente esté metido al medio, ¿no? Y que zumba muchos más tiros de calidad. El tiro de calidad lo hace mucho más veces y marca mucho más goles porque él, cuando se la daba a Saka, quería que estuviese ahí directamente, no en banda, tener que ir hacia adentro y zumbarle desde ahí. No, aquí ya está Saka directamente ahí puesto, ¿no? Es lo que está explicando. Como que su lateral arrastra a Saka, ¿no?
Insane amount of goals with him because he gets into that inside forward spot a lot quicker. And when Ben White used to be on fullback, which he was on before, it took Saka used to occupy the right-hand side space. And then in the final phase of play, he would move in and be there for the shot. But because Ben White's there pushing into that space, Saka moves in. And it's one of those ones where, again, I think it would do EA a good job. I think they would do well to explain to people how they interchange with each other. Because they're saying, when Tom says 30% of people in the top divisions didn't even use tactics, and that was crazy to him. The reason why they didn't use tactics is because you don't explain how the tactics work. Like, you give a vague understanding, but after that, it's about trying to figure it out yourself. And these are so detailed and so in-depth and so nuanced that it would take somebody like years and years and years to be able to like almost reverse engineer exactly how every tactic works within itself. And so people just go off of a feel. And that, again, is exactly why people copy pros tactics, because they feel like they're the best ones.
Sí, que la gente no capta nada porque no lo han explicado y copia tácticas de pro y luego no le funcionan. La verdad que es un desfase eso de que el 30% de la gente en primera y en élite no vaya con tácticas.
Another thing that Josh says, which is actually quite interesting because it's true to me and it might be true to you as well. He says, you can tack on here if you want the D-pad. I think people saw it had changed and have just ignored it this year. I have completely ignored the D-pad this year, other than sometimes doing an offside trap and sometimes doing team press. I almost never use the D-pad. He says, but it's super powerful. The focus menu of attacking, default, and defensive makes a huge difference and only changes a player's focus, which is this, no, let me put her back there, this here. Attack, roaming, I don't know if...
Básicamente dice que él este año no está usando tanto la cruceta, pero que dicen que es súper importante y que lo único que cambia es lo de focus, de atacar, defender, ¿no?
There's a difference between attack and roaming versus a balanced attack or whatever. But yeah, if you're holding on to a lead and you set your focus to defending all of a sudden, if I had Ashley Cole and I set my D-pad tactic to attack, well, he doesn't have it here, but if I set it to defend, all of a sudden he hangs back way deeper. It makes a big difference. He says, intermittent potatoes, what is the difference between out of position, which is, let me show you. Let's put a player in at CDM that is not a CDM. So if we now go into the tactics, notice how Martinelli's already got the exclamation mark on him. If we go into the tactics screen here, go to edit tactic, and then go to player roles, it says here, player out of position. Role and focus are simplified. To enhance them, pick a player with this position as one of their preferred ones. A lot of people think this has not too much meaning, and it didn't used to.
Bueno, yo en mi experiencia voy a decir que si juegas así, ese jugador no hace nada. No se mueve, no parece que no tenga animaciones y es prácticamente injugable.
Now it really does. So what is the difference between out of position, no role, which is something like what Ben White has right here. He's in the right position, but he doesn't have the role for
Sí. Diferencia entre fuera de posición o no tener el role plus
or plus or whatever. Role plus and role plus plus. And this is where it gets really interesting and why it caused me to change my chem styles.
Going back to their defensive positioning or taking a long time to attack, especially when the ball kind of changes possession really quickly, that is due to the plus and the plus plus. The more pluses you have, I guess, the faster that transition will be. It's almost like the player is spacing out. Not that it is. It will just kind of take longer a little bit to transition. And I think people don't realize that sometimes they say, oh, but my player is not doing anything. Well, because you're probably playing without the role plus.
In this instance right here, he's talking...
Coño, ¿habéis oído eso? Dice que esto es verdad que pasa bastante cuando pierdes el balón. Básicamente te está diciendo que los roles plus o plus plus funcionan en las transiciones, ¿no? Cuando tú pierdes el balón, tú imagínate, estás con balón. Mira, por ejemplo, el ejemplo perfecto es su equipo, ¿no? Tú imagínate que el chaval pierde el balón. Lo que le está explicando el desarrollador es que cuando pierda el balón, Ashley Cole va a recuperar mucho más rápido posición, o bueno, va a estar mejor posicionado que Ben White, ¿no? Porque Ben White no tiene role plus. Es verdad que puede jugar, que sí que tiene animaciones, pero va a tardar más en responder a la transición. Oye, pues esto sí que es importante.
Talking about the transition between attack and defense and players moving between attack and defense when possession turns over. And he mentions how somebody with a role plus plus effectively does their job better and quicker. And that is where the in tandem with defensive awareness and attack positioning comes in. If you win the ball back, or let's say you lose the ball, right? Let's say you lose the ball, and you've got players in a role plus plus, they recognize a lot quicker the fact that they have to get back to where they go. And when we listen to this next part right here,
the players analyzing all the runs, like there's 10 different spaces to run to, and then they will rank the run. They might do the second best run because they don't see that the best run, you know. So there's a lot of subtleness and nuances.
The more you've got, the better they are with runs. If they have 10 runs to choose from, if they don't have the role...
Básicamente dice que cuando pierden el balón, la IA del jugador analiza como 10 movimientos que puede hacer y si no tiene el plus plus o el plus, descarta la primera opción. Entonces corre un poco ahí, pues eso. Como el Madrid, ¿verdad? La presión
they won't always select the best run. If they have the role plus, they will do a better job of selecting the better run. And if they have a role plus plus, they will choose the best run almost every time, depending on attack positioning. And it was really interesting to hear that, because straight away it kind of connected some missing links for me. And I'm not saying that this game doesn't otherwise have gameplay issues, right? There are gameplay issues with this game that this can't resolve and won't resolve. But think about the way you play this game and how sometimes your player makes that sick run and sometimes they don't. Sometimes your player is always in the right position and sometimes they're not. And then think about whether or not you have them in a role plus plus.
Está diciendo que entiende que mucha gente está enfadada de que el juego no va bien, básicamente, y que eso es verdad, pero que si esto es verdad... es verdad que a lo mejor nosotros no lo estamos jugando bien el juego. Que pues, a ver, yo entiendo lo que está diciendo, también es verdad que, como él ha dicho también, nadie ha explicado esta forma de jugar, ¿no? Nadie nos lo ha explicado. Entonces, claro, dice, imaginar la cantidad de veces que tú tienes un jugador que corre bien una jugada y la siguiente está mal, y tú dices, pero que no se mueve, eso nos está pasando a todos. y según él es por los play styles y por los roles.
And how
Bueno,
much attack positioning
por
you
él
have
no.
on them. And that is why I switched to giving at the very least a roll plus to every one of my players, but trying for roll plus pluses and giving attack positioning and defensive awareness to my players.
Eso es, básicamente, les ha dado a todos los que puede el roll plus plus y le ha aumentado a todos los defensas el defensive aware y a los atacantes el attack positioning, el posicionamiento de ataque.
Because defensive awareness makes them pick up.
Básicamente lo que busca es aumentar la IA, ¿no? De todo, ¿no? Que elija mejor dónde tienen que posicionarse, ¿no? Le da igual que corre un poco más o un poco menos, pero que esté siempre bien posicionado.
On the defending quicker, get into position quicker. And people kept asking me, wouldn't you rather have more pace than more positioning?
Eso, que le da
The
igual
answer is no, because the better positioning counteracts the need for pace. So I was running some teams with like 38 pace Mangala in defense, and he was just fine. Like, he was just fine. Like, did he get burnt every now and then? Yes, he did, but he was just fine. And so it started making me think, if you actually found a tactic that you liked, and then you had roll plus plus players in that tactic with high attack positioning, you would be able to very consistently attack in the same ways that you want, because you would have a way higher chance of your players just being in the right position and the right place and making the right runs all the time. And although he's only in a roll plus, Saka is the one that I've focused on the most for this, because I've got him set as an inside forward, and I kept like looking at when does he move into that role, how quickly does he do it, where on the field does he move into that inside forward role, and what other things influenced whether or not he did or not. And it was so obvious. It was so obvious that he would just find that space in the right spot all the time. And if I could show you a heat map from him or an activity map, it would just be on the edge of the box all the time. So now when I'm attacking, unless I'm on a counter attack and I'm building up fast, if I'm building up the play slowly, or I'm just in a bit of like a good amount of possession, I know where he's going to be all of the time. And
básicamente dice que desde que ha cambiado los roles y les ha aumentado el posicionamiento de ataque o el posicionamiento defensivo, él sabe dónde van a estar todos los jugadores. A no ser que juegue al contraataque o haga transiciones muy rápidas, rollo de, pues eso, triangulazos, para que lo entendáis. Si ataca lento, él sabe en qué punto está Saka, siempre está en el mismo, dice.
And it's so refreshing because it makes it really easy to play with him.
No way. So like the plus and the plus plus influences a lot of different things.
But what he said there, guys, just don't gloss over that again, because I think sometimes he's saying things and almost skips past it because it's super powerful information. The roll plus and the roll plus pluses influences a lot of things, and one of them is the attributes.
And one of them is the attribute. So before, like, we only use attacking positioning or defensive awareness to do stuff.
So there you go. Before, they only used to use attacking positioning and defensive awareness to do stuff.
Let's say you're going to maintain your defensive line. We mostly use the defensive awareness. You're going to find a space. Let's use your attacking positioning to position yourself. But now we're using the plus and the plus plus with it.
So now they're using that with it, not instead of, or not, it's not part of it. They are now in combination. So attack positioning, defensive awareness.
Que antes esos movimientos de ella los hacían solamente con el posicionamiento de ataque y el defensivo, pero que ahora mismo están en combinación. Entonces, claro, si tú pones los roll plus plus o roll plus y además le subes la IA a esta, pues como que las cartas van a ir bien.
Awareness and rolls are working in tandem with how well players attack and defend. And again, I just want to preface, I'm not going to say that you're going to go and put some roll plus pluses on and get your attack positioning up and defensive awareness up, and all of a sudden you're going to be like a 15-0 player. It's like there's still like some element of like skill has to be involved there, but it should make your game feel. You should just feel in more control of what you're doing if you apply.
Dice que porque lo hagas así no vas a ir a pasar a hacer un 15-0, pero sí vas a entender cómo funciona tu equipo y no el descontrol total que estamos encontrando todos ahora mismo.
By my logic of the defensive awareness and attack positioning.
In a sense, like let's say to position in the defensive line or to do a run, even if you have like 99 attacking positioning, but you have a regular roll, that almost means that you would have a lower attacking positioning to do that run.
Right.
We're not reducing attacking positioning. It's just that now the attacking positioning might be just 80% of that formula.
So he talks about formulas, and this is where it got me to change everything. You can have 99 positioning, but if you're not in a role, you're not out of position, but not in a role, you don't get the full boost. You like the amount of formula that attack positioning gives within that role or within the calculation is less than if you was in a role plus plus.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not 100% of that formula now. So I think it's still important to have a high attribute, because it's still the majority of a lot of the formulas and a lot.
Básicamente te está diciendo que si tienes un 99 de posicionamiento ofensivo, ¿no? De posicionamiento de ataque, pero el jugador no está con el roll plus o con el roll plus plus, la fórmula hace que no tenga el 99. Vamos, se lo va a bajar, ¿no? Dice, no se lo bajamos, sino que sí que se lo baja, me está contando. Dice, no, es que va al 80%, por poner un ejemplo, ¿no?
A lot of the things that we use to dictate the runs, the support areas, defensive line, marking, it's still the attribute, but the roll plus and the plus plus kind of plays a huge chunk of it too.
And again, this is where I think Tom gave away not too much information because EA like approved the podcast, but it fascinated me how the words he used with, you know, the attribute is still important, but the role plays a huge part of the defensive line, of how quickly players in like transition between attack and defense, with the runs that they make, with the support that they offer. And it just made me think, God damn, would I just be a better player if my players were just in the place I expected them to be all of the time? Not some of the time, not every now and then, not here and there, all of the time. And again, like there is a nuance to it, right? Like you're still going to lose games. Other people will still have roles and roll plus pluses. You still might face a better player or just have a bad connection or some input delay that like completely negates this. But I can give you some assurance that since I started playing with players on roll plus pluses and improving attack positioning and defensive awareness, my wins have significantly increased in champs. And
que desde que lo está haciendo gana muchísimo más partidos.
Rivals, which is brilliant. And it doesn't, like, obviously, like, the role itself matters. Like, if you want...
Yo la duda que tengo es, ¿se notará mucha diferencia entre el plus plus y el plus?
For example, if you've got a center mid and you want them to be...
Todo esto hace que las stats de los jugadores sean engañosas. Exacto, es lo que ha dicho él. Bueno, dice la fórmula. Básicamente, si un jugador... En resumen, lo que te está diciendo es, si un jugador tiene de posicionamiento de ataque 98, para poner un ejemplo, pero, bueno, sí, las estadísticas y demás, lo que hacen los roles es darte el 100% de ese 98 o bajarte al 80%. ¿Cuánto es el 80% de 98? Yo qué sé, 92, básicamente, ¿no? O sea, que los roles te aumentan o te disminuyen. Él te habla del posicionamiento, pero claro, es que el posicionamiento, yo creo que lo de posicionamiento se está refiriendo a la IA, totalmente, ¿no? O sea, que te pone todo el mundo que ha tenido a Ronaldo Nazario, por poner un ejemplo, sabe que Ronaldo Nazario es buenísimo de usar y facilísimo, entre comillas, porque se mueve solo por el campo, ¿no? Al final tú das 3 pases y está solo, ¿no? Pues ese tipo de cartas o que defensivamente está bien posicionado, ¿no? Entonces, básicamente lo que nos está explicando es que hay que aumentarle lo que hemos dicho, los atributos que ya hemos explicado y además ponerle correctamente los roles para que esté siempre en la posición y sobre todo en las transiciones cuando recuperas o pierdes balón lo hace muchísimo más rápido. Por eso regla Lucio que no tiene plus plus en defensa, sino que hay que ponerle el defensa ese líbero, no sirve, ¿no? No lo sé, habría que mirarlo. También supongo que a lo mejor le tienes que aumentar lo de la defensa, también dice, ¿no? Y Ginola solo tiene plus plus, eso MI y yo lo uso delantero y no tiene nada. Como que ya, pero dice que entonces no le estás sacando el 100% a la carta.
A playmaker.
Hay verdad que hay cartas que son tan sumamente tochas, ¿sabes? Que funcionan bien, ¿no?
But they have box to box plus plus. And so you're like, okay, I want to put them in box to box plus plus because I want to get the best out of the roll. I want a plus plus. Just keep in mind that they are going to also track back. So if you've got somebody, now Little Kim's not a great example of it because she's got high defensive awareness as well. But if you've got a midfielder that's got really high attack positioning and really terrible defensive awareness, let's say Bukayo Saka, and you set him to a role, whereas like, you know, a winger and you've got him set to defend, he's not going to defend very well and he's not going to transition very well because his defensive awareness is absolutely terrible.
Vale, te está diciendo que aunque él tenga el rol de defender, por poner un ejemplo, ¿no? El rol de defender de Saka, como no tiene de posicionamiento defensivo, este que está aquí abajo, es que no se me ve a mí, me voy a quitar un segundo. Como no tiene esto que hay aquí, donde, espérate, esto de aquí, ¿vale? Como no lo tiene, no va a defender bien. Entonces lo que hay que hacer es buscar un 50-50 entre, bueno, 50-50 no, intentar llevar al 100% lo que tiene bueno de atributos, juntándolo con... que me he quitado ahí. Tiene que, el atributo bueno que tenga, juntarlo con el playstyle bueno que tenga, ¿no?
Roll plus, in that. He's only got the roll plus. So making sure you pick roles that make sense to how you want to play, getting them as plus plus, and then boosting defensive awareness and attack positioning. should see you have a massive improvement.
Por poner un ejemplo básico, tú imagínate que la Kim esta, me lo estoy inventando, tiene de Defense Awareness, esto lo de defensivo, tiene, pues yo qué sé, 50, pero tiene Holding de plus plus. Y dice, pues lo voy a poner Holding porque tiene el plus plus. Y dice, ya, pero es que tiene posicionamiento, lo de defensa tiene 50. En cambio, en ataque tiene 80, pues la tienes que poner de box to box con un plus solamente de playstyle, ¿sabéis? Pero a ese saca, por ejemplo, si le pones gladiador para subir la defensa, dirá lo mismo. Exacto. Tú lo que tienes que ponerle, por lo que ha explicado, era, creo que era finisher y no sé cuál más. Y en defensa era gladiador y otro más, ¿no? Tienes que intentar subirle lo que es la IA a la carta, te está diciendo.
Improvement in how you play this game. And then what we're about to listen to now, guys, is Tom giving like a percentage modifier of what the stat does within the rolls.
Out of position is probably like
Mira,
a half
aquí te está diciendo números de cómo cambia.
of what the regular row is. I think the out of position is
Out of
probably
position.
like a half of what the regular row is.
So a half of what the regular roll is. Now, again, this is half in terms of its importance in the formula, but I try and just look at it and take it in face value of like, so if you've got 99 attack positioning on your left mid, but it's a striker, they're going to get actually 50 attack positioning.
Claro, claro. Es que esto es lo que yo os estaba diciendo. Es exactamente lo que os estaba diciendo. Os he dicho, tíos, a mí me da la impresión cuando pones a un juego, mira, gladiador, finisher, de die y centinela, esos son. Cuando pones a un jugador fuera de posición, tío, no se pueden usar, si es que no se mueven. Lo primero que he dicho antes, vale, aquí el pibe, el desarrollador de EA, te ha dicho que le bajan el 50%. El 50% es mucho, ¿eh? Es decir, que si tiene 80 de tiro, tiene 40, que 40 lo tiene un central. Aquí te está hablando del posicionamiento, pero es que un delantero que tiene 92 de posicionamiento es que se te queda en 46, que es un mojón absoluto. Claro, no se mueven. No se puede jugar fuera de posición.
It explains so much. Sometimes I'll sub on players like they're out of position. I'll sub on like, I don't know, Ethan Nwaneri, who's a cam for me, and sub him on at centre mid, and he's just useless. And I'm like, how is he so bad? He's got good stats. He's got, he's got good rolls. He's got good skills and weak foot. He's got good play styles. How is he so bad? He's out of position, which means where he is positioned is...
Exactamente, diciendo, es que tengo ahí una carta muy buena, que tiene muy buenas stats, corre 90, tiene 95, pero lo pongo y no, es que no va bien. No va bien porque le están bajando el 50%.
Always going to be in the wrong spot, or at least more often than not going to be in the wrong spot.
So let's say if the regular row is 80, the out of position is like 40. So like the out of position is really a big penalty. And then kind of the row plus, it would be almost like 95% of what it was in the past. And then the row plus plus is actually better than it was. So I would say it's like 110 or something.
Vale, básicamente te está diciendo que en esa... Es interesante, muy interesante. Básicamente te está diciendo que el roll plus le da un 95% sobre posición. Si tiene 100 de... Que no puede tener 100, tiene 99 de posicionamiento ofensivo, el roll plus le da 94, ponle, ¿no? Y el roll plus plus le da 110%. Ojo, Ojo,
Or 115 or 120. It actually makes players improved to what it was before.
And so again, if that right there, what he talks about, the percentages of how important roles were with positioning, defensive and offensive, was why I changed everything. Because I've now got, for example, this Kai Havertz, I've got him as advanced forward plus, and I've got him on 99 positioning, which means in theory, he's on 120.
Claro, es lo que está diciendo. Esta carta de Havertz, que me salió a mí buena media, la di como SPC, tiene de posicionamiento 94. Al ponerle lo de rematador, se le pone 99 de posicionamiento. Y al ponerle en el roll plus plus, se supone que tiene 120 de posicionamiento ofensivo, que básicamente es la IA, ¿vale?
20-ish, maybe 115 positioning. So his positioning is just much better than it ever has been or ever would be before. Now, of course, you can have players with high positioning, but really low pace. Or really low physical. So once you've got the ball, really low dribbling, maybe bad play styles and things like that.
Sí, dice, no corre tanto. Dice, da igual, si es que está solo delante del portero, ¿sabes?
So once you've got the ball to them, or once they're in the right place, then it's still something to do after that. But generally speaking, like, I'm going to show you some like proof as well in a moment. But generally speaking, like having the good positioning or good defensive awareness is a game changer. And the way I want to...
Dice que es un game changer, que tener ese posicionamiento... Es que es la IA. Ahí le ponen un nombre que le dé la gana muy bonito de posicionamiento de no sé cuánto. IA, pura IA.
Like, give proof around that is with a game that I played in the weekend, in Rivals yesterday. This guy right here, right? So he has Diego Dallo at right back, an Evo version of Dallo on an anchor, which also gives high defensive awareness. And Dallo has got, I don't know what his 84 is, what that 84 Evo has got, but his base card has got 76 defensive awareness. See this team, this guy, he was cooking me, guys. Let me tell you, man, I was struggling. I couldn't create any chances. I went 1-0 down after 8 minutes. I did pull it back to 1-1. I went 2-1 down. I went 3-1 down. And then it got to halftime. And in the second half, I started absolutely smashing this guy. I honestly, like, it felt like I was playing someone new. But look at something here. Who's he now?
Bueno, básicamente dice que en el Food Champions había un tío que le estaba destruyendo y que en la segunda parte supongo que
got a right back. He's got a Dharma Traore at right back. And I...
vale. Dice, es que el chaval estaba jugando todo perfecto, no podía hacer nada y que de repente tiene aquí a Adama Traoré.
I feel like he probably thought, oh, herder, 3-1 up. Let me bring on somebody with like 99 pace for right back because pace is king, pace is
y que le puso a Adama Traoré como para decirle, venga, pues te voy a atacar por banda con el Adama Traoré.
Everything. But even when I just play this simple ball, watch what Adama Traoré does. Adama Traoré is way out of line.
Que se está yendo para atrás, rompiendo el fuera de juego y sin cubrir al otro, porque Adama Traoré está fuera de posición y básicamente no capta absolutamente nada.
Position, he turns and runs away from the ball.
Podemos decir que es como Lucas Vázquez o como Vallejo.
And as the game cycle goes, as this game goes,
sí, mira,
back in at 3-2,
no
then in at
capta
3-3,
nada.
then at 4-3, then the guy...
Pero es que mira Adama Traoré dónde está. Bueno, es que no se le ve porque estoy yo aquí, pero mira, el chaval está atacando y mira dónde está Adama Traoré. F Adama, Vallejo.
I quit when I went 5-3 up. And I do go, look at this goal. Look at Traore. Look at Traore. What's he doing? He has completely left Kai Havertz in acres of space. And it is because he has got no defensive awareness whatsoever. And that's why I don't even think I scored off of that chance. But I was looking at the goals that I scored. All of the goals that I scored were from the left-hand side. And again, let me tell you, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything. Look at Dalot's heat map. Look at a central area specifically. He defends a lot in that central area because he's in the right position. He defends all the way down, or his activity map is all the way down into the box, almost like on top of the centre-back spot. And then when you look at Traore's activity map, look at the difference. Look at that difference between Dalot and Traore. Traore actually has a little bit more down towards the goalkeeper, which almost shows again how bad. Maybe it's because I got to attack more, but it just shows how bad it is. Like Dalot's activity map is way better because he's a better defender, so he was better positioned. And it genuinely blew my mind that I was able to win a game because somebody brought on an attacker, because this was the season pass of Adama Traore. So he was out of position and he only has 46 defensive awareness, which means he got punished even more so down to like 25, 30 defensive awareness. Or even less, maybe even 22 or 21 defensive awness.
Claro. Te está diciendo que es que a lo mejor, como le reduce con el play style y tal y cual, a lo mejor es que tiene 22 de IA.
Never in position. And it made it really easy for me to win the game. And I couldn't believe in that second half how easy it was to get down that left-hand side and to score goals. And again, it just made me think, God damn, this isn't just Tom Kalefi saying, oh, hey guys, roles are really important. They influence your attack positioning and your defensive awareness massively. These stats are really helpful with where your players are, how quickly they transition between defense and attack, and are more important than people think. This is evidenced to that fact, and it's a real big unknown. But there was a thread on Twitter from Division 10 Moment, or Div 10 Moment, and he showed an example of a plus role versus the AI without a role. So he said, here's an example of the movement of a centimid with box-to-box plus.
Esta es la diferencia entre un MC que tiene el plus en box-to-box y otro que no.
It looks versus a different centimid without the role. Same game, same position, same formations, same player overall rating.
El mismo partido, la misma posición, la misma formación.
The right one
es mejor, igual jugador con el rating, tal.
Is with the plus. You see here, this is a box-to-box. He barely gets to the other box. He has a little bit of activity just outside the box here, but most of his activity is in the center circle and a little bit deeper. But for the box-to-box plus, this is the activity map. And what a stark difference. He has a heavy activity at the top of the box and a heavy activity in the defensive box. And
mira, básicamente está diciendo que al tener el box-to-box, mira la diferencia, que está en todo el campo.
And then an extremely heavy activity in the middle of the field. And even though an activity map in itself doesn't really kind of paint a whole picture, it certainly lets you know that the difference between a player having a role and having a role plus is significant. And as I say, guys, for me, I've spoken a lot in the 6 p.m. content about when I look at SBC players and stuff now, like one of the things I'm looking out for the most is attack positioning on attackers and defensive awareness on defenders, and the roles that they have and how many they have at plus and plus. And of course, I made a video earlier on in the game cycle where I put a whole team of role plus players together.
Guapo, eh?
It was a bit of a pain because everyone was going forwards, but it played way better than I thought it would. And I genuinely believe that roles and the way they influence players to play are significantly more valuable than anyone thinks that they are. And again, one of the reasons why I believe that is because EA gatekeep the amount of roles that you can have. And we've already had a few evolutions where if you had a role ++, you are not eligible for that evolution, which again shows that EA don't want people to have.
Dice que la gente se ha empezado a dar cuenta y que él se dio cuenta cuando ve que la gente, o sea, perdón, que EA Sports no le pone tanto rol plus y que al final en las evoluciones es más complicado meter cartas con rol plus o no meterlo. ¿Sabes? Como que hay más limitaciones.
Have loads of role ++s because they are so
Que
powerful.
EA no quiere que tenga las cartas muchos roles plus.
And so I wanted to talk about that today. I hope I've been concise enough to kind of get the point across.
Bueno, básicamente, en resumen, que hay que subirle con los playstyle que hemos dicho, perdón, con los con los playstyle no, digo yo, con las químicas que hemos dicho, el posicionamiento ofensivo y el defense awareness, que no me acuerdo cómo se llama en español, y luego eso ligarlo con los roles plus o plus, porque si incluso fuera de posición te quita un 50%, con el rol plus da un 95% y con el rol plus te da un 110, 120%, lo cual es un verdadero desfase. Muy interesante, tío, me ha molado mucho este vídeo, voy a probarlo ahora, vamos a estar aquí en directazo viéndolo. Dejadme en comentarios vuestra opinión, ya sé por dónde vais a ir, ya pero va mal la conexión, bla, 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 bla. Bueno, pero me parece muy interesante probarlo porque es verdad que parece que los jugadores vayan como pollo sin cabeza, que la gente que no capten nada y por lo que están comentando sí que funciona bastante. Así que, tío, dejadme en comentarios vuestra opinión y nada, chavales, nos vemos en el próximo vídeo, en el siguiente directazo.